Voters made their decision in Tuesday's primary election. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser heads to the general election seeking a third term, but Bowser didn't win in a landslide. She faced stiff competition from Councilmember at Large Robert White. Delia Gonzalez is here to explain the story behind the numbers. And so, Delia, we know that the Associated Press last night called that race relatively early.
They did, but it was close. In the 2018 primary, Bowser took 80% of the vote. This time around, she barely hit 50%. So let's take a deep dive into the numbers. Challenger Robert White easily took Ward 1. That includes some of the most diverse communities in D.C. Bowser dominated in the district's wealthiest wards of Upper Northwest, Wards 2, 3, and 4. 4, of course, is her home base. But take a look at Wards 5 and 6, which include the northeast neighborhood of Brookland down to Shaw and over to Capitol Hill. The incumbent there won by just a few percentage points. And while Bowser won some of the most marginalized communities east of the river, more people in Wards 7 and 8 combined cast ballots for her challengers. But even in Trayon White's own Ward 8, she beat their council member by 4 percentage points.
The candidate that articulates a message of law and order and more police generally wins. And so while it was close, she did have stiffer competition this time, but in general, the candidate that says we need more police, I'm going to be that person to do that, they typically win. And we saw that last night.
All right, so some interesting takes there. So let's talk about turnout. Only 22% showing up at the polls. What are some analysts saying about that low showing?
Well, we do know the Board of Elections still counting the numbers at this point, but despite that low percentage point, they do say we hit the target for the average voter turnout for primary elections. Believe it or not, general elections tend to see a much larger crowd, closer to 65%. So since the pandemic, the D.C. Board of Elections has made it easier for folks to vote. Ballots are mailed to all registered voters with self-addressed envelopes that can be mailed back or submitted in drop boxes that we see all throughout the city. There are 39 early voting centers, 90 on Election Day, and you can cast ballots at any precinct in D.C. But again, we talked to Troy Prestwood with the Ward 8 Democrats. He says despite the access, this all comes down to timing and tradition.
There's just isn't enough time for people to understand that June is the primary. You know, back when I was just starting out, September was our primary date. Ever since we've moved that primary date up to June now, we've seen a precipitous drop throughout the district.
Okay, so that change, I just checked with the Board of Elections, was made in 2014 to meet the February deadlines for overseas ballots, but there seems to be some more work there to kind of get the word out, to get the electorate to come out.
And Delia, what are you hearing from voters? I can imagine they had a lot to say yesterday.
They did, and today as well. And this is really interesting. So I stopped by Ward 8, and that had the lowest voter turnout in the whole city, about 4,000 less than most areas. I spoke to one voter. Here's what she had to say.
Guns, how they get here, the drugs, just 29 streets, how do they get here?
But you still vote.
But I still vote, hoping for a change that hasn't came yet. People at this point, they're discouraged. Whereas though I'm still continuing to vote, others have said, what's the point?
What is the point? She is very frustrated, and I should note, I actually interviewed Miss Paulette Matthews back in 2017. Since then, her son was killed in a shooting in Northwest. But back in 2017, when I interviewed her, she was fighting displacement from the Berry Farm housing development. City leaders under this administration promised to redevelop and let her and her neighbors return. 5 years later, they're still waiting to go back, and that development isn't even finished yet.
Yeah. But in spite of all of that, she still votes, participates in the process, and hopes that things will eventually get better.
That's right. That's the only way to make any change, really, in this area.
Absolutely. Delia, thank you so much.